So, Adeptus Mechanicus, the codex that I can't pronounce a single thing in. Whatever, let's talk about the new detachments and rules, shall we? Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. As always, my name is Jay. In this video I want to talk to you about the new detachments for the new Adeptus Mechanicus Codex, which is now on pre-order. In my previous video I talked about the Necrons Codex, coming out the same day. That's pretty cool when they're doing double codex releases. And this is all about the Ad Mech Codex. Yeah, let's talk about it, right? So overall, of course, they got 5 detachments total. Overall, I think it's a huge improvement. Once again, a huge improvement on the codex. It presents a lot of fun ways to play the army. It presents a lot of cool detachments. It's the first codex so far in this edition that there's a huge improvement between the index, the index detachment, and the equivalent detachment in the codex. They've actually done a huge improvement. We'll talk about that in a moment. They gave it a new name, made it much better. So that's huge, right? That's a big change compared to the other 3 codices where they basically just moved it to the new codex. Yeah, there are some really big improvements. I really like the play styles of these new detachments. It doesn't pigeonhole you as much as the old one. I really love bringing a lot of Skari units, personally, in my Ad Mech, and I think this is really going to make that fun. Almost all the changes in the data sheets were basically improvements. My favorite improvement of the entire codex was the cybernetica datasmith, which no longer requires a leadership test to change the protocols of the robots, right? And they dropped the infantry keyword from it, so and which is also a huge change too, which is great. And the Skatros guy, the guy in stilts, he's pretty cool too. I don't know if I'll be buying him for my army, but he's cool assassin with giant legs running around the battlefield. Yeah, That being said, I don't know if this codex... I haven't seen the points yet, but I don't know if this codex is going to be as good as Necrons, Space Marines, and Tyranids, which is pretty hard to say because they're all mid-codices right now. There's been no codex yet that has been a meta breaker, a meta buster, taken over the meta. And I don't think this is going to be one of them, to be honest. I could be wrong. Please leave comments in the comment section down below what you believe, but I don't see this as a meta breaker. In fact, I see this as the weakest of the 4. There are some good combinations, which you'll see, but it doesn't necessarily break the game, and I don't know if there's going to be, again, it's going to bring some competitiveness, though. It's definitely a huge improvement over the index. There's going to be some fun ways to play. I just don't think this is a meta breaker. We'll see. Furthermore, a lot of people are saying that even with the new detachments, the best units from the index, the Cataphren Breachers and the Iron Striders are still going to be taken in giant amounts, and I think that's still the case with this codex because it's unfortunate I don't have either of those. But that's okay. I think both of them are going to still be taken a lot of... they're going to be taken in droves for this army, depending on which detachments you take. And the other thing is, everyone was really hoping that the army-wide special rule would stop affecting 70% of the models of the squads, and they didn't fix that. It still only affects models with the Doctrina Imperatives rule, which only is 21 of the 30 data slates. So 70% of your army it applies to, and that's really important when deciding how to build your army. It's just weird that there's the army-wide special rule. It's army-wide special rule, by the way, doesn't affect the whole army. Still weird. And for those of you who don't know what the army-wide special rule, it is called Doctrina Imperatives. As I mentioned, any squad that has Doctrina Imperatives keyword gets Doctrina Imperatives, and before the game you can basically choose which Doctrina Imperative you want to do. There's the Protector Imperative, and there's the Conquer Imperative. And so it's unchanged. This is the same as the index, right? The Protector Imperative makes all ranged weapons heavy, which is cool, and provides your units in the deployment zone with a reduction in AP for incoming ranged attacks. Cool. The Conqueror Imperative, on the other hand, makes your weapons assault, which is cool, and improves the AP of your attacks against enemy units in your opponent's deployment zone. So one's really offensive, one's defensive. But as I mentioned, this only affects 21 of the 30 squads. The new Sindonian Scaptros is one of the ones that actually has this rule, so that's great. It's just, you know, so does the Iron Striders and the Dragoons. But it's just, it's weird that they don't affect everyone, you know? Of course, the good news is that they only require you to be within rather than wholly within the zones, so if they're towing the lines, it helps. But let's get to the detachments, shall we? So up first, we have the Rad Zone Corpse detachment, which used to be called the Rad Cohort detachment in the Index. This is the Index detachment, right? And the 3 previous codices that have come out, well, including the Necrons, which will come out next week, it's just been moving over from the Index, really. A slight tweak in the Necrons one, but not a big change. This one actually is a huge change. Number one, different name, right? It used to be called the Rad Cohort, now it's called the Rad Zone Corpse. And the Rad Bombardment rule has been greatly improved from the Index to the Codex, which is awesome, right? For those who don't know, basically, the Rad Bombardment, at the start of the first battle round, your opponent gets to choose whether each unit in their deployment zone is battle-shocked or receives D3 mortal wounds, which is pretty cool. On a 3-up, sorry. D3 mortal wounds on a 3-up or battle-shocked, right? However, the new improved version of this is if your opponent chooses battle-shocked, they still can take D3 mortal wounds, but on a 5-up versus a 3-up. So your opponent has to make a decision. Are they going to automatically, take D3 wounds on a 3-up, so 2/3 chance that they take D3 wounds, or take Battle Shock, and still can potentially take D3 mortal wounds on a 5-up, right? It's important what units that your opponent wants to spend some command points on, of course, because you can't spend stratagems on units that are Battle Shocked. That's a pretty cool upgrade, right? Because now it's a trade-off, but it's a cool trade-off in your opponent's mind, like, ooh, 5-up versus 3-up, do I want a Battle Shock? This is a great improvement. Plus, there is an enhancement that you can take that adds 6 inches to this, basically. So as long as your guy's on the table, it adds it to 6 inches from the battle zone, from the deployment zone. And it continues throughout the rest of the game. Of course, if they stay in the deployment zone, they can take a single mortal wound and a battle shock test for the rest of the game. And as I said, you can even extend it by 6 inches. So that's huge. This is a huge improvement over the previous one. It can be really annoying. If your opponent is one of those armies like Tau that really just wants to huddle in their deployment zone, this could be pretty annoying. Take a lot of mortal wounds and get battle shocked as well, especially for those low leadership units. Overall, I think that's an improvement, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah, like to me, it's definitely better than the Index version. So we've had a first success from Index to Codex. This is a huge improvement. Up next, we have one of the 2 new detachments that I really love. I'm definitely going to try this one out in the future. It's the Skari Hunter Cohort. So finally, we're back to the Skari. As the name suggests, we're going to be focusing on the Skari. It's a really cool. It encourages you to take, a bunch of little guys, little Skari running about the battlefield, which become a real nuisance for your opponent to kill. This obviously really reminds me of the previous editions codices, because this was literally a very similar rule to one of the previous attachments. I think it was one of the Forge Worlds from the Codex. The detachment has a special rule called, of course, Stealth Optimization, which is the rule of this detachment. And what it does do is Skari Infantry, Skari Mounted, and Iron Strider units gain stealth, so -1 to hit, pretty easy across the board. In addition, Skari units gain cover if the shooting unit is more than 12 inches away. So this is very similar to one of the Forge World rules of the past. I like it, right? So flat -1 to hit, +1 to a saving throw makes your guys a pretty hilarious, increases the survivability. -1 to hit is huge. Like Space Marines hitting on 3s becomes 4s, Orcs from 5s to 6s. That's half the number of hits. Awesome, right? Helps keep them alive. Plus, you can really stack this detachment with other guys like Belisarius Cawl, who he gives cover to all units that fit under a large area, right? Because he has such a large aura. And the Dune Crawler which gives a 4-up invulnerable save. So that basically makes your guys, -1 to hit, possibly on a 3-up save, 4-up invulnerable save with a huge surface area. Like, especially you stack these guys and you can use a huge bubble. This makes your army really hard to kill. And if you stack it with a giant horde of Skari Rangers or Skari Vanguard, that sounds like a really fun, survivable, and competitive army. That's to me a really fun competitive list. Like that could be really annoying for your opponent. It might be really aggravating trying to kill all these little guys that aren't worth that many points, right? Sounds like a fun upgrade to me. This is definitely, I think this is the strongest detachment overall, but it's also sounds pretty fun. Sounds pretty aggravating to annoy your opponent. Up next, we have the Data Psalm Conclave. Conclave. Wow, it's hard to pronounce these things. This detachment focuses more on the Cult Mechanicus side, right? Well, the previous one focused more on the Skitarii side, hence the name. This one focuses on the Cult Mechanicus side. And the detachment rule is called Benedictions of the Omnissiah. And what it does do is, basically at the beginning of the game, you could choose one of two buffs, right? One of two ways to make your Cult Mechanicus units better. One is called the Panegyric Procession. I wonder who comes up with these names. These are pretty funny. Which gives +1 AP within half range. So +1 AP or melee with the citation of Savagery, which basically just gives +1 attack and +1 strength if they charge that turn, which is huge, right? I think Procession is strong, right? Because it's simply +1 AP. So it makes it better, right? A lot of shooting, great. You give it to your Cataphron Breachers. That's going to be pretty crazy, right? The other option is Procession, which is the Salutation of Savagery, which just allows you to run your guys up the field, get in close combat, and +1 strength and +1 attack could lead to a lot of wounds. A lot of attacks with the close combat guys. The Fulgurite Priests and stuff, that'd be really cool. Yeah, the Cataphrons. I think that's pretty cool. In the end, this one is interesting. It only focuses more on the Cult Mechanicus side, which is, what I said, Cataphron Breachers are basically the strongest thing in the Codex, basically. So, but I like to focus more on the Skitarii side than the Cult Mechanicus side, so I don't see myself taking this one as much. But it could be cool. I think it could be pretty strong depending on the point costs for your armies. Cool stuff, right? Hard-hitting close combat, can shoot. Cool detachment. Yeah. Up next, we have the Explorator Maniple. As I said, whoever comes up with these names, great job. Tongue twisters every time. Their detachment rule is called Acquisition at Any Cost. And it's all about objectives. Basically, it makes your army better at shooting or better wounding, I guess. But it all depends on objectives. So basically, during your command phase, you pick an objective, which becomes your acquisition objective marker. It could be in your zone, could be your opponent's zone, could be in no man's land, and until the next command phase, every time that that you target an enemy unit with an attack, ranged or melee, so it could be in close combat, so you can choose it if you're there. If either your unit is in control range of the target, or your opponent's squad is in range of the target, it is reroll wound rolls of 1. Cool. So this could be really nasty, right? So if your opponent is camping on an objective, you can just pick that objective and blow them off it every turn, especially if you're going second, because you can kind of react to your opponent and you can figure out what they want to do and then just blow them off the objective every time so they can never score. It just makes that harder. Also, there is you can play a stratagem, which is called the Info Slave Skull stratagem, which basically gives you a second one, right? So you can get 2 acquisition markers, and if your opponent's down on 2 objectives, blow them off it. Pick one yours, one theirs, and just have fun, right? And so it gives you a lot of ways to react to your opponent, and just makes them incredibly stronger. Reroll wound rolls of 1, which is great. As I've talked about many times in this edition, it's so much easier to hit your opponent than to wound, especially for Skari. So a reroll to wound roll is really cool and strong. I like it. But what do you think? Up next, we have the final detachment. And this is actually my favorite one in the entire codex. Not because it's the most competitive, but I love robots. It has the feel I love. I love the robots. They really got me in Ad Mech was the robots. It's called Cohort Cybernetica. So you know it's about the robots. Very cool stuff. Is this one the most competitive? I don't know. I think the Skari one is, but it's pretty cool. And so the detachment rule, of course, has to do with robots. It's called the Cyber Psalm programming. And what it does do is Legio Cybernetica units, robots, from your army gain the Doctrina Objectives army rule. So you can make them heavy or assault. So you can give your robots a bunch of guns, and they become assault weapons, where they can advance and shoot at full ballistic skill. That's pretty awesome. I think it's fun. I don't know if this is going to be the most competitive because it's all about the robots, but still, it's pretty cool. The other big thing, as I mentioned, is the cybernetica data smith has been fixed, so it no longer has to take a leadership test to make to change the operatives. So that's pretty cool. I think it'll be a fun one to try. This is actually the one I probably want to try the most. But a bunch of robots just advancing around the battlefield, shooting everything, sounds pretty fun to me. I think it's pretty awesome. Or they can stand still with heavy and just +1 ballistic skill never hurts too, right? That's fun. But that's it. So those are the 5 new the new detachments. And in the end, it was pretty much a new detachment, like a new and improved detachment from the index to the codex. There's the new Skari one, which I think is the strongest because you can stack so many things on top of each other, and it makes the Skari a bunch of little guys. The way I think that the army was kind of designed to be played, it makes it really fun and annoying for your opponent, right? Then there's the Cult Mechanicus one, where you makes them hit harder in close combat. That's awesome too. There's the one all about objectives. If your opponent's camping on objectives, makes them easier to kill. Or if you're camping on objective, makes it easier to kill your opponent. I like that. And then of course, the Cybernetica one. We're all about robots, right? I love the theme of the robots. That's the first one I'm going to try. When I start playing my army again for Ad Mech, I'm playing this one first. I can't wait to try it out and see how it does. If I win or lose, either way, I'm going to have a great time. But overall, as I mentioned, there are tons of ways now to play this codex and have a great time. Overall, it's definitely more competitive than it was in the index because the index wasn't very good. It was arguably the worst index. Yeah, right? And they even fixed the Rad Cohort detachment, which is great. They made it so much more fun. Tons of different models. Now, I think, again, Cataphrone Breachers are still the strongest in the codex. Iron Striders are still amazing, right? You just put a bunch of las cannons on them and fire. But that being said, there could be a bunch of Skataris, there could be a bunch of Fulgurite priests, there could be a bunch of robots on the field as well, and it's going to be really cool to see what detachments and what kind of lists come out of this codex. I think it's, once again, like the other codices, it really has succeeded in bringing a lot of different playstyles, a lot of different models, a lot of different fun options and competitive options. As I said, I just don't think this is a meta breaker codex, but it's a huge improvement from the index, which is saying something, I guess. But what do you think? Leave comments in the comment section down below for what you think about this particular codex. Do you like the detachments? Do you like the army? Do you like the rules? What do you think about the guy on stilts? Please like the video, comment in the comment section down below, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Please hit that bell so every time that I make a new video, you see it, because I'm going to keep making review videos as long as I can. So stay tuned for more review videos and videos about, Martians, people from Mars. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting your Adeptus Mechanicus army.